Is this book as metal as the cover? We're going to talk about it. Hey, welcome back to my channel. I'm Erica and I appreciate you being here. Today, we're going to be talking about this book. It looks metal as hell, right? And look, my shirt here is not just for like vibes, okay? I love metal, super into metal, love in flames. This is not my most metal shirt that I have, but I realize the one that would be the most metal is probably not appropriate for YouTube. It's from Lorna Shore, which, like, if you know, you know the kind of like shirts that they have. Ironically, their shirt would probably accurately depict a lot of what goes on in this book, but I'm trying to remain somewhat general public friendly here, so you get one of my inflamed shirts today. This cover certainly promised me a book that is metal, didn't it? Look at the horns, all right? If you're gonna throw the horns up on a cover, I want you to deliver a book that is metal. Did Keith Rawson manage to do that? You know what? I kind of think that he did, okay? What I'm gonna do is talk about some like non-spoiler thoughts, so I'll give a non-spoiler review, and then I do have some spoilery thoughts at the end. I am gonna put chapters in this, so if you only want like the spoiler thoughts, feel free to jump ahead. If you haven't read this yet and you don't want to be spoiled, no worries. I will not spoil you. I will definitely give you ample warning before we start talking about the spoilery parts of what is actually going on in this book fever house. For right now though, we're gonna keep it spoiler free. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that they chose the perfect cover for this. The book did live up to my metal expectations. We got criminals, we got clandestine government, like black ops agencies somehow involved in what's going on. We got some average people, we got some occult supernatural stuff going on. So this devil horn on the front, whoever was in charge of this cover, who was the publisher? So it looks like Random House. Dude, whoever chose the cover for this at Random House, you need a raise, because this was like chef's kiss, okay? Perfect. So in Fever House, we're following around a hand, presumably this hand, where some weird stuff starts happening for anyone that's like around the hand, and it starts happening pretty fast. Like, this book hits the ground running. It pretty much doesn't stop until you get towards the end. Like, the pacing is just like boom, boom, boom. This entire book takes place over, I think, just a day. I don't even know that it's a full 24 hours that it takes place, so this is fast. A lot happens. We're following different characters. Some of them are connected, like you see them ultimately meeting up with each other, but a lot of it takes place in different locations because the characters are separate. There is some overlap, but I love when it's done well, when you can see different perspectives of things happening in different places, and that definitely, I think, was done really well in this book because you are focused on so many different groups of people, and they all have some different parts to play in this story for the angle that they're coming at this with. Having said that, I don't know that I feel that there's like a ton of character development in this book, but also I don't know that there needs to be. Like, I'm here for a good horror story, which I feel like I got delivered an interesting, weird horror story. Like, we went on a ride, man. Pretty much by the end of the first chapter, like, weird stuff is happening. And I would say the pacing towards the end of the book kind of lets up a little bit, but only because you start to realize, oh, there's gonna be a sequel. And indeed, there's gonna be a sequel. I'm not sure that this is gonna be a series or even a trilogy, but there is for sure going to be a sequel to this, which makes sense, I think, as to why the pacing kind of like let off a little bit as we got towards the end of the book. But I don't even think it was that much of the end. Maybe like the last 15% of the book I thought kind of like slowed down a bit, but don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of stuff happening. It's just you start to see there's not going to be a resolution here. If you want resolution, you're gonna have to wait. If that kind of thing bothers you, like if you don't want a cliffhanger where you're like, oh my god, what is gonna happen now though, then maybe wait until the sequel comes out, because there is no resolution at the end of this book. You find out some answers for like what is going on, but definitely not all the answers. And frankly, a lot of what I got answered just raised more questions for me. But I liked that. I think that there's a lot of room to explore like the supernatural mythology side of this in the next book. That's what I'm personally hoping for. Like, I want to know more about like the occult, you know, supernatural magic-y side of this, because we definitely got the horror. Okay, like this book was full-on horror story. I loved it. There was like some pretty graphic violence in it, so if you really don't want any graphic violence in your horror story, you are probably going to have a tough time with this, because it's certainly not to the level of like most of the Saw movies or anything like that, but there is graphic violence throughout this. I'm not sure you'd really be able to get through the book if you're not okay with that, because it's just like, it's interspersed everywhere. It's not even like you can just skip over it, because like it's throughout the book. It's just what it is. There's horror that I can enjoy that's kind of like a slow burn and a slow build up. This was not that. This was like pedal to the metal. Again, no pun intended, but this was like full speed ahead. We're doing a horror story. There's gonna be violence. There's gonna be weird mystery. There's gonna be supernatural stuff. You're gonna have all kinds of questions about what the hell is going on. How do you stop what's going on? And is everyone actually working together? Like, is everyone actually working together to make this stop? What's up with his hand though? This hand that's just like floating around, and there's apparently some evil stuff going on with it. I'm for sure gonna be reading the sequel, but man, after this cover, I don't even know what they could do for the sequel cover. Please give me something good. Like, cover designer at Random House, please make an awesome like super metal cover for the sequel. This whole book is a kind of horror that I think has to be done in a certain way for me to really like it. Otherwise, I'm like, this is just like senseless violence and like gratuitous graphic violence for like no reason except to shock you. I didn't feel that way in this book. I felt like this author was very intentionally setting up each scene, and the violence just like, it added to the atmosphere and making you feel the kind of like tension that the characters in the book were feeling, as well as everything just like totally goes off the rails, which indeed it does. It starts going off the rails like immediately, and I felt like the author, with the way that he kind of like interspersed the violence in this and chose which scenes to show to the reader, I think that he did it in a really effective way to be a good horror story, instead of just being like, this is just gratuitous like violence for violence's sake. Clearly, I really liked Fever House. I'm ending up rating it 4 stars. On the spooky meter, I wouldn't say that this is super spooky. Right now I'm gonna say maybe a level 3 spooky, because most of like the supernatural like spooky elements, we only got just like a little dabble of that. We just dabbled in it. I really want more. The jury is still out. Hopefully, I'm hoping the sequel will delve into that more. Maybe that'll have a higher spooky level than this one does. But overall, for I think what the author was trying to accomplish, I would say 4 stars. And then of course, on the scale of like how metal is this book is metal as hell, okay? So if you want like a super metal horror book, this did not let me down, and I'm very excited to read the sequel. Those are my non-spoilery thoughts for Fever House. I do have some spoiler thoughts. If you have not yet read Fever House and you don't want to be spoiled, then unfortunately our time together must now come to an end. But I always appreciate you coming by, and I will see you next time. For the rest of us, we are gonna stay, and I've got some spoiler thoughts that I need to talk about. Okay, so Matthew made a deal with like the devil or a devil or something, right? To turn his body parts into these relic things. But I have to ask, like, for what purpose? I'm sure on the devil's part, the purpose was just like chaos and mayhem, right? But like, what was Matthew's purpose for doing this? Like, I know that he thought that he was going to be able to get like a second chance, but what does that mean? Did he think it was going to be time travel? Did he think he was going to get just like another somehow perfect opportunity to be with his wife and kid and have a music career? Like, What exactly did Matthew think the deal was going to be with some devil? Look, if the show Supernatural has taught me anything, you don't make deals with evil entities. Like, you just don't. No good can come of it, which should be inherent, but apparently not. Apparently there's still people like Matthew running around doing some weird, like, devil deal ritual stuff. But does he have an accomplice? Because he had like all of those symbol things on his back. So how did those get there? I don't think he could do it himself. Was it done by like the devil thing that he made some kind of a deal with? Does he have a partner in this? Why was he at their friend's house in Chicago, of all places? Did he just appear there suddenly because Catherine was there? Or has he been there this whole time? I got questions. I got a lot of questions about what Matthew was doing in his descent into satanic madness. But also, like, whose blood was in his apartment? Didn't they say that like all the blood that was on his floor was not his? So like, whose was it? Cuz that's a lot of blood to just casually have on your floor, and it doesn't belong to you. So like, whose was it? Where is that person? And then of course we had Michael. I almost called him the opposite of the Hand, just because the implication through the whole book is that he's an angel, but like, we don't really know that. He was a harbinger of like an end time event, but we don't know that he's good. We just didn't really see him do anything like super evil. Also, I loved that he took out Lundy. Like, Michael's laying there, he's finally dying. As just a one last fuck you to Lundy and to Ark, he took Lundy with him. I was like, you know what? You deserved that. You deserved to have that win, Michael. I don't know yet if you're a good guy or a bad guy, but like, Lundy was pretty evil in general, but like especially evil to you. So like, I'm not gonna begrudge you that last act of vengeance. There was a lot of instances in this book where I felt like the author actually surprised me, which I loved. You know, when Bonner, I thought that he got taken out. I thought Wiles like shot him, and I was like, oh my god, we're just killing this dude off, until a while later and we get Wiles's chapter. You know, I think that we see some background from her in that chapter, and it's finally revealed like at the end of it, right, that she thinks that she might have missed Bonner. And I was like, oh, so it's not just like the zombies that we're not sure if they're coming back, but it's our characters that we're following that we can't be sure if they're like really dead or not. I guess unless you really destroy the head, which is not that outlandish. I feel like that's pretty common in horror, right? If you want to be sure, you've gotta like separate the head or do something to where it's just not gonna work anymore for this being to come back. I guess since we have that voice broadcast, that now we've got like a worldwide zombie apocalypse situation going on, I assume, right? I'm not entirely sure how you shut something of that magnitude down. Like, it's one thing to just have Portland overrun, which, yeah, it's a pretty big city and like things can get out of hand, but like that's one city, and it sounds like this voice message was broadcast like worldwide. I also want to know who in this day and age picks up the phone for unknown callers. Like, I know why some of our characters did during the book, because obviously they got a lot going on. Like, Nick is still trying to catch up with his mom, so he doesn't know what phone she's going to be calling from. But like, how many people worldwide are going to be picking up the phone and answering it when it's like an unknown caller? And it turns out it's just like, I don't know, a devil message that makes you go crazy. But I guess it works regardless, because you don't even really need that many people in order to spawn, like, spread this, whatever it is, this fever, the zombie fever. They got a fever, okay? It started out with just a handful in Portland, and as we saw, it devolved within hours to being like totally citywide, just rampant anarchy destruction. So I mean, I guess you don't need that many people to get like infected worldwide, but at that point it's like, man, is this gonna be just like the end of humanity? Because if it's not contained, then it's just everybody everywhere wants to eat everybody. It's a 28 days later situation, right? Or more recently, The Last of Us. I mean, we've seen real life too, how fast things can spread. So I'm interested to see where the sequel goes, because I think it takes place several years later, right? So presumably there's still some semblance of society. I'm not entirely sure how, because you would have to like worldwide contain it. Presumably the author is going to answer those questions. I feel confident with like how this book was structured. I trust this author to actually explain like how exactly humanity survived post this mass zombie event. But I assume we've got to find this hand. How long do these hands, like how long are they good for? What's their expiration date for their evil capabilities? Because obviously there's more hands we learned from that old guy down in LA before he killed himself in like a real gross way. We learned there's more hands. So I assume these hands have a shelf life. I'm not entirely sure how long it is, because this hand has been separated from its body for like, what, 10 years now? And it's still like super evil. So I really want more answers on like the occult supernatural side of this in the second book. That's what I'm really going to need from this author. So I'm really hoping that's what we're going to get. Overall, I feel like this book was the right level of horror for me. Got a little zombies, got a little occult stuff, got a little bit of violence, but not like too much violence. We were jumping around, so it kept me engaged through the whole story. There was never a part in the story where I was like, I'm bored, why are we doing this? It always felt like, okay, we're jumping ahead, and we're jumping ahead to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, because, I mean, in a real life zombie apocalypse, it would feel like things were happening quickly. I think the author did a great job at bringing that feeling to me as the reader. Like I said, overall 4 stars, super metal book. No regrets that I read this. I think it absolutely lived up to my expectations, and I'm really happy with it. Presumably, if you've watched this far, you've also read Fever House. What did you think? Did you think it was a good horror story? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Are you excited for the sequel too? Were you disappointed it wasn't a standalone? Because I didn't know that this was not a standalone. So imagine my surprise when I saw there's only like 1 chapter left and like nothing is resolved. I think the next one is coming out next year, so hopefully we don't have to wait too long, but still, I'm like, I want to know what happens right now, though. I get so impatient at a cliffhanger like that. Yeah, let me know your thoughts on Fever House, if you liked it, if you didn't like it. If you have any suggestions for more books that are like this kind of storytelling that was good, effective horror, let me know. Once again, I'm always interested in putting more books on my TBR. First book on my spooky Halloween reading list is down, and it was a success. I'm really pleased with it, and I'm really looking forward to the next books that are coming up as well. I love, of course, seasonal reading, and it is the best time of the year for me, where I love to read scary stories, horror stories, kind of like those Halloween vibey stories. That's all I want. And you know what? Mr. Keith Rawson, you delivered, so thank you. That's all that I've got for you today. Thank you so much for coming by. I always appreciate it. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content like this. I'll see you next time. Thanks.